responsible for tasting the king's wine and sampling the king's food to make sure that there were no assassination attempts on the king. And so to come before the king's presence looking like something was wrong could very well mean that somebody had a plot against the king. And so Nehemiah informs us in chapter 2 and beginning at verse number 1 that it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that the wine was before him. And I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Nehemiah informs us now, I had not been before time sad in his presence. He says, and because Nehemiah had not ever come before the king with his face looking sorrowful, the king asked him, why is thy countenance sad? He says, it doesn't appear that you're sick. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong from what you've tasted that has caused you to have some kind of discomfort in your body. Therefore, this must be the sorrow of the heart. At that point, Nehemiah said he was very afraid. He didn't know what the consequences of coming before the king's presence in this manner would be. But it was Nehemiah's heart that was heavy and full of grief. It was Nehemiah's mind that was troubled because of what his people were suffering and enduring in Jerusalem. Nehemiah just couldn't be happy when he understood that the city which housed his father's graves was in such a bad condition. Nehemiah couldn't have any joy in his heart because God's people were suffering, and not because of something that just happened by coincidence. They were suffering because of their own actions, and many of them didn't even realize it. It was upon this occasion that the king realized that Nehemiah had a sorrow that was deeper than an infirmity in his flesh. So the king asked him, Nehemiah, what would you desire of me? Nehemiah's only request was to send me back to my father's house so I can rebuild the walls of our city. God gave him favor in the sight of that king. And the king allowed Nehemiah to go back and to rebuild his father's city. But before Nehemiah could head up this task of rebuilding those walls, my brothers and sisters, Nehemiah was going to have to put a plan together. Literally, Nehemiah was going to have to purpose and plan to work. What I want us to do this morning is look at some of the steps that Nehemiah took as he planned and purposed to work. And I believe these same plans will help us rebuild our faith in the Lord. The first thing we notice that Nehemiah is going to do, if he's going to rebuild something that has been tragically destroyed, he has to check out the condition of the situation. All right. Are you with me? Nehemiah had just heard how bad things were. But if he was going to make things better, he had to take a trip to Jerusalem and to check out just how bad things were. Therefore, here in our text, beginning at verse number 11, Nehemiah confirms the fact that he came to Jerusalem and he stayed there 3 days. He arose up in the night. He says, I and a few men with me. And he didn't tell them anything. He didn't tell them what they were going to do or what the purpose was. He says, neither was there any beast with me. He didn't travel with an envoy. All he had was the beast that he rode upon. He went out by night and by the gate of the valley, even before the dragon well and to the dawn port. He said, and he viewed the walls of Jerusalem which were broken down. He also surveyed the gates which had been consumed with fire. From there, Nehemiah said he went on to the gate of the fountain, even to the king's pool. There was no place at that point for the beast that he was riding upon to pass. So he went on by himself by the brook and viewed the wall, and then turned back and into the gate of the valley. And after that point, Nehemiah headed back to where his brethren were. He says even the rulers did not know where he was, what he was doing. He hadn't told the Jews, and he didn't tell the priests. He didn't tell the nobles. He didn't tell the rulers. He didn't tell anybody who was even involved in the work what his plan was, because Nehemiah was checking out the condition of the situation. Brothers and sisters, you have to understand that if we're going to be effective in rebuilding what we have ourselves destroyed, when you have messed up and you realize that you messed up, you literally need to remove yourself from the situation to survey how much damage that you have done. Amen in here. You do a whole lot of damage to yourself when you remove yourself from God's safety and decide to indulge in the pleasures of the flesh and in this life. You do more damage to yourself than you actually realize. And so in this state, we need to do just like Nehemiah and sit down and survey the damage that has happened because I walked away from God. Right. Once you acknowledge the fact that you are your own problem, once you realize that the reason why you're in the shape you're in and experiencing what you are experiencing is because of you, when you realize that you have done some things which have caused you to suffer some consequences of your own actions, you need to, if you're going to get better, because see, the process is you either get better or you grow bitter. Amen. You either get better or you're going to grow bitter. Now it's my task through this process to help you, if you're even in a state of bitterness, to help you out of it by helping you to realize that the answer is not being bitter, but the answer is rebuilding so that you can get better. In order to get better, you have to realize how much damage you've done in your own life. I know that's hard because some of us can't accept that. Some of us can't accept the fact that we are our own problem. Some of us have spent our life placing the blame on somebody else. It was mama's fault. It was daddy's fault. My sister hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been in this situation. It's the husband's fault. It's the wife's fault. It's the children's fault. It's the preacher's fault. Amen. It's everybody's fault but your own fault. Even in Sunday school, we learned that here was the young man Timothy, growing up in a family that was spiritually divided. His mother was a believer. His daddy was an unbeliever. Now, one may have said, Timothy is going to just be a boy. He just like his daddy. All right. And he gonna be just like his daddy. Timothy decided that he was going to have the faith of his grandmama and his mama. My friends, you can decide who you're going to be. Amen. Folk been passing blame on folks since the beginning of time. Oh, walk with me. Walk with me back to the book of Genesis. After Eve had eaten from the forbidden tree and gave it to Adam, he bit off of it as well. He knew better. And then when God asked him, what is this that thou hast done? He said, the woman. Amen. Whom thou gavest to be with me. And God said, because you listened to her. Just because she said that, Adam, that didn't mean you had to listen to her. Hello in here. We're so busy passing the blame on everybody else that we don't realize when we're wrong.
Right on.